Chava Zenilman, it's a privilege and pleasure to be sitting with you here in Jerusalem. In unfortunate circumstances, part of this conversation, but as an incredible person. You just finished medicine, you got 3 beautiful children, and you're the wife of Ari, who was a true Gibor Yisrael, a hero of Israel. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for, sharing our story with the world.
So, I want to go to a difficult place. The moment when you found out that Ari was killed. Where were you? What happened?
Well, it was December 10th, 2023, last Hanukkah. I was home. It was right after my family had a Hanukkah party. All men in my family are in reserve duty, so we were just the women and the children, just trying to, keep our heads over the water and, share the beauty of Hanukkah with our kids. After we finished, cleaning up after the party, me and my sister were sitting on the couch talking when we hear 3 knocks on the door. My mother goes to check who it is. And when she opens up the door and sees the soldiers, she says, "Which one?" Because at that point, there were 4 members of my family in Gaza fighting. At that moment, they walk straight to me. They say, "Chava." And that's when I obviously understood right away. And the officer kneeled right in front of me and shared the horrible, horrible news. And it's interesting, like at the end of the day, I'm an optimist and I try to look at the bright things of life. And I do, I thank God I was not in my house. I was by my parents with family who were able to be there and support because there's a lot of things that need to happen at that night. I remember every single minute and everything they said and everything that was going around us. It's a moment that you realize that your life changed. Yet I also felt clarity of, I know what Ari wants right now. I know what my job is to do right now. And this clarity that, this is what we need to do right now. We're going to get through it together.
When you say together, is that with Ari, channeling that? Is that with your family? Is that everything?
Well, first of all, when they say it takes a village, it's true. It does. But it's definitely me and Ari. I feel him in every cell of my body. Channeling through, especially because, at the end of the day, we're parents and the kids need to know Ari. But I also mean it with my kids. I am very, very fortunate to have 3 beautiful kids. And when people ask me about Hansacha, I say, how to commemorate Ari. And I say, at the end of the day, the biggest celebration of Ari and Ari's memory and legacy are our kids. So that's what I mean by together. Also with family, Ari's family, my family, our friends, our community, and also Jews all over the world. We feel it. We feel the hug. We feel the support. So together has become quite a big word.
Wow. And then what's going on inside? How do you move through to the funeral and then to the Shiva? You have this clarity and this memory of the blow by blow of that experience, but bring a bit of that, not on the outside, what other people seeing, what's happening on the inside, how are you moving through that, and what stands out in those moments?
Well, Ari's family, Ari has a sister doing shlichut in Australia and a brother who was visiting in New York. So there was a lot of technical things of, trying to figure out when would be the right time for the funeral. It's Hanukkah. They need to get on a plane. They need to come back. We need to tell everyone. They need to have time to come. Like there's a lot of, those things, a lot of practical things. In medical school, we do that. Like when there's an emergency, we move to the practical mode. We think what needs to be done. At that point, I understand that I'm in shock and that there's no way that I feel how horrible the situation is right now. At that point, I feel like I'm looking at my life from the outside. So like I'm disconnected. I'm sitting in the living room. I see everything from the top, like playing moment by moment what needs to happen. Later on in conversation with friends, with other widows, I've learned that that's something that a lot of people feel. So it's kind of disconnecting from the situation to be able to
It's like in
do
surgery,
what you
you go
need
into
to
operation
do.
mode.
Right. So like it's going into the mode. There's decisions to make. There's decisions to make. Where's Ari going to be buried? Who's going to speak in the Levaya?
Funeral.
How am I telling the kids? They're sleeping at that point. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a baby that was 2 months old at that point, sleeping in the stroller next to me. How am I telling them? How are we handling the next 24 hours? What's going to be the best environment for them? At that point, I asked to also speak with a kid's psychologist or a social worker to give some guidance. I also asked to speak to a rabbinical figure to get some guidance of, the Jewish laws and approach to the death, and especially in this in these circumstances.
So how did you tell your children? What did you say?
That was probably the hardest thing I ever done in my life, and I've done some difficult things in my life. I decided to tell them separately. Achia, I told him about an hour and a half before the funeral. We went from my parents' house. We went to drop Tali off at friends, a very, very close friends, and then continued to Ari's parents' house. We were going to leave together as a family from there to Har Herzl, where Ari was going to be buried, the cemetery. And I took Achia to a room. And I told him, that Abba went to the army. Abba went to war. Abba went to protect us, to make sure we could live a better life, like Ari told us in all the conversations. And I told him a war is a very dangerous thing, very dangerous, and people get hurt and people die. Just a month earlier, my brother was injured in Gaza, so Achia was already familiar with, that not everything is all pink and pretty. And then I told him that Abba died, and we know what Abba wants from us, and we will continue to always feel Abba in our hearts and in our brains, and he'll always be here with us. But it's going to be hard, and that we have each other. And Achia, at that point, he understood right away. Started crying. And I just hugged him. We sat there for a while, and then from there, we continued to the cemetery. I had Achia come with me. Tali, I felt, was too young. I told her, after the funeral, we went to pick her up from the friend's house that I mentioned earlier, and we went to sleep, and the next morning, she came into bed with me, and I hugged her, and I told her that. And she was just like, okay, I'm hungry. And walked.
How old is she?
And walked. She was 3 at that time. Now she's 4. And Mayan,
2 months.
she's 2 months old. So we never really had a conversation. But one of the pictures I have is of the people, the officers from the army, sitting at the couch next to me, and me nursing Mayan, who just woke up as a baby. So she obviously feels everything that's going on, and we have these conversations with the kids, and it's clear for me that she feels loss. Clear. Because every time I play Ari's voice, a voice note, a video, I see that it does something for her. She recognizes that voice. She's familiar with it. Also, when Ari was in Miluim in Gaza, and we couldn't talk, and I would play a voice note for her, and she would calm down. So she definitely knows that voice. And now we all talk about Abba, and she misses him too. I know that without it.
There's something so powerful for me about that image. There's the officers speaking to you, and you're processing your life will change forever. At the same time, you're feeding your child.
Yeah.
You're you're your own person, you're a doctor, you're a wife, you are, your own person, and then you're also a mother. You have to shield and protect them. How do you balance that? What was that week like? How did you make time for yourself and for them at the same time?
I feel like the balancing act, it's not just in that week. It's all the way today. The balancing between where I am emotionally and what my grieving process is, and where it meets them. So it's always trying to understand that balance between, because also we might have different needs, or we might do things in a different way.
And experience things at different times.
Right.
You could wake up one morning feeling something, and then another thing, and then you've got to...
Right. And I could also speak of it, and I could go to a psychologist, and what kind of thing, what do the kids need? Like, they also need to learn and understand. And it also, the understanding changes. Every month that goes by, we understand more, and the grieving process changes and becomes deeper. So at that week, it was Hanukkah. There was no Gan. So like they were already off schedule. We decided to hold the Shiva at Ari's parents, by Ari's parents, and my friends and siblings basically set up a ketana for the kids. And I think up to this day, they remember it as like the most fun ketana they ever had. They were on schedule from the morning until the evening. It was very important for me that I get them ready in the morning. We eat together lunch, and that I bathe them and put them to sleep. It was important for me to remain like that. They understand that even though the house is crazy right now and there's thousands of people walking in and out of the doors, I'm still the mother. This is the schedule. Like, I'm right here and we're together, and there's some things that didn't change. But they had probably the best Hanukkah ketana they will ever have in their life. And then after that, things started to settle a little more. And it was time to make big decisions of how each child is going back to their gan. What prep do they need before? What kind of guidance do the gananot, the staff, the kindergarten staff need? And it was also it's also learning that process as well. And at the same time, where am I? How am I doing? What am I? I'm 2.5 months post-birth. Like, a lot of things are happening. My body's a mess. Like, everything's a wreck. And a lot of things that need to happen. I didn't trust myself being alone for the first 30 days. And up to the shloshim, the first 30 days, I always had one of my siblings with me.
Is that because of the extreme sadness?
No, it's just because I wasn't sure that I could give the kids everything they needed at every single moment.
And deal with your own stuff.
And also, we said everything going on. I have an infant at home. We're still learning how to welcome the third child into, like, it's so many changes. And also at that point, like, I couldn't drive. I lost my voice. I couldn't eat. I was functioning, but I couldn't be alone. So then having that extra, family member in the house was very good for the kids and for me as well.
I think that self-awareness that you had is really important. To know when you need therapy, to know when you need to deal with your children, to know not to be alone, to call on that help, all these things. Is that something you always had?
No. I'm like as Ashkenazi as it gets. Like, we don't ask for help. Like, this is really, really new. It took very extreme circumstances. And it's something that we're still learning how to do. People in my field, we don't like asking for help. Like, we
You're
like being independent and helping other people. So it's a challenge, and I'm learning it. But it was just, I'm saying, like, between like everything happening at home, it was always good to have that extra set of hands.
So tell us about the Shiva, the Shloshim. In Halakha, in Jewish law, there's these key moments of aninut, and which is pre the funeral, and then you've got the funeral moment, and you've got the Shiva moment, and then you've got the Shloshim, the 30 days, and then you've got the time when saying Kaddish, and then you go through that first yacht site, and you get to, like, what are these things like? You know, we read them about them in books. People shouldn't go through them at your age, but you did. You know, what are the key things you remember from those? What happens in those spaces?
I think, you know, we studied psychology in medical school and my bachelor's degrees. So I knew that research, you know, has actually looked at the Jewish model as a very successful model in dealing with loss. And what I remember is, you know, expecting at every step to feel some sort of relief and being extremely disappointed that there isn't. So that was what I feel was the cycle of, like, I understood the logic of the Shiva. You always need to have more people around you. And then in the Shloshim, you're very surrounded. There's a lot of processing happening, a lot of things that also need to happen at that point of time. So it's very busy. And then at the year, so it was a Shana Meuberet, it was a leap year. So we had 11 months, the 12 months, the 13 months. And also we also had the year, they also were you know, commemorating the anniversary of October 7th, the Hebrew date, the English date. So
how many?
So there were so many
memorials.
So there were so many like there were so many things happening all the time, and I just remember this feeling of, like, okay, we'll just get through this, and things might be better. Like, I'll feel more in control. I'll be like, it will hurt less. But what I've grown to understand is, you know, with all these expectations of these landmarks, is that while I felt disappointed, I do understand that there is something that's changing, but it's also, it's that I'm learning how to ask for help, and I'm learning how to deal with my pain, and I'm learning what helps and what doesn't help. And the fact that the kids are growing and the life around this huge black hole is also growing. So I feel like
it's navigating all of that at once.
So yeah, so like I do feel like that there is some sort of process. I do it, but I could also tell you the second year is more difficult in some ways.
Why do you say that?
I feel like the first year there's a lot of shock. Let's get the first Chag, the first Pesach, the first, like, you're just getting the first Yom HaZikaron, the Memorial Day. Like, you're always like in this kind of shock in survival mode. And in the second year, you understand.
It's like reality set in.
It's reality sets in, and you understand that the depressing part, so now it's forever. Like, there's that understanding. But also that's when I go back and say, like, I am so blessed to have our 3 kids, because every time I fall into those thoughts, then my kids prove me wrong. So, like, I came back from the hospital this morning. I was on call for 26 hours. I still, like, had to get home, dress up the kids for Purim, you know, do their makeup, go in, all the music. Like, they remind you, like, how they're growing and their excitement and how, like, so.
And that's almost like Ari provided you with that comfort, because you built these children together and they'll be there forever.
So it's amazing also because Mayan's pregnancy was a bit of a surprise. And she was born a week before the war. So I remember, and we were thinking what to name her. And, you know, we take turns, like which side we name after. And it was Ari's side. It was Ari's turn. And we were thinking of the name, and it was really important for Ari, the name that we chose. It took time for us to settle on a name. And we said Mayan Nechama. And I tell Ari, but make sure everyone knows that Nechama is named after Grandma Emma, after your grandmother. It's not after a tragedy, because Nechama is a name of tragedies. And Ari just laughed.
Nechama means comfort.
Yes. And then the war started 3 days after we named her. And I said, oh, I understand now. And then Ari was killed 2 months after. And then I realized, like, you realize the Ruach HaKodesh of, yes, the
divine inspiration.
And the gift, that it's a real gift. And
It's interesting. A Mayan is a wellspring, and it's different to like a bore. It's more like a be'er. It's different to digging a hole in just water. It's water that you go to the ground and it's live and it's always there. Nechama means comfort. So she's almost like this eternal sense of comfort that's almost this channel that Ari still continues to give you through.
Yes. And she resembles him in the most surprising ways. And it's true. Like you really feel, they say, "Shlosha shutafim ba'adam,"
So there's
right?
3 partners in creating human being.
So they say that it's the parents, the father, the mother, and God. And that there's some sense of Ruach HaKodesh when you name the child.
For sure. You can see the divine inspiration through
Yeah.
it.
So
Wow. And so who was Ari? Who's the person you fell in love with?
So Ari was my best friend. My best friend. He was born and raised in the States, like a little on the technical, because of the timeline, or what is it?
Whatever you want to share, where he comes from, and who he was.
Okay, I feel like his life story definitely like explains also a lot, because Ari was born and raised in the States. His family moved several times, but based on his father's job. And at 14, the family decided to make Aliyah. And Ari starts here, 9th grade, first day of 9th grade, barely, Hebrew wasn't as good. And he sits here and he decides that he's going to be, he's going to be Israeli. A year later, he was already counselor at the youth movement. A year after that, a year after that, he volunteers with blind to read in English and Hebrew for them. And a year after that, he finishes with the top of his class. In top grades, he was with Scharia. And he starts learning in yeshiva earlier than the rest. He was getting, the army was sending all these mitsuyanut, excellence programs, and he decides that he's going to yeshiva and he's going to go into Kravi.
Into combat. And he was in the yeshiva of
Yeshiva Hagush
Har Etzion.
in Har Etzion. Following the values that he really were so important for him. After that, we met when he was in yeshiva. He went to study philosophy, economics, and political science. Throughout that time, he looks around and says, there's so much data in the world. We need to learn how to manage it. And he starts researching and, tells me about this new thing that's happening in the States, this data science programs. No one has ever heard of it in Israel at that point. And Ari was already 10 steps ahead. And that was Ari. Ari was a true Zionist. He, with his family story, with all the moving, he really, really felt that family was the most important thing, really a place of stability and that feeling of home and comfort. So that was, which really was a huge part of him. He was extremely bright, hardworking. He was he was just the most curious person in the world, which is so amazing because I see it in Achia now as well. He could read anything. He was reading some philosophy article and he would read something in biology with me as well, reading a few books at the same time. And also he was a Talmid Chacham that always believed in Safra V'Sav, like always, combining the worlds, and every day he learned something. There wasn't such a thing as like him going to sleep before sitting down. Daf yomi, shnai mikra.
All different,
everything.
A page of the Talmud every day. And
he had a different word also. The study was to read something general, and to learn is to learn Torah. And every day also had studying and also had learning. And he was fun. He loved sports. He followed the Minnesota Vikings football team, like religiously, and not knowing football. This was a whole new world to me, which was also so sweet because the team reached out after Ari was killed, and also dedicated a game for him, and just like these so many things. Like he was just he was such a learner, so smart. He was also like looked at the world with like, he was a critique, his critical eyes. But that was also what was amazing, was that he could have been critical about something, yet give his whole heart and really like, passion into something as well. So like there was so many things in his personality. But people always ask me like what he was for me, and he was just my best friend. He was that person that you meet and you feel that you're not alone anymore. And that's a feeling it's difficult to explain it to other people, because it's not just that he was interesting and he was like, there's just that feeling that like I'm never alone again.
Makes me want to be friends with him. Like, you're describing such an amazing person.
He was and it was just, he was that person that, he wasn't the most outgoing, the main guy of the party, and kind of like, no. He was very, we say very modest and like, really the people that he loved knew it without a doubt. And he was just so full of love and just compassion and passion towards us as the family.
So it sounds like you said he made you feel like you never want to be alone again. And now you're alone in that sense without him. Is there, number one, what's that feeling like? And number two, are there any moments where you either wish he was there or also feel like he is there? Are there any moments in time when you feel like, seeing this is what Ari would have done, this is what that experience is like?
So first of all, I didn't go back to being Chava that I was before I met Ari. Like that person, that's Chava, Ari's Chava. It's who we built ourselves together. It was very fundamental in our relationship that we're growing together, and as well growing individually. Ari was in the middle of his master's and a lot of learning, and I was in the middle of my medical school. And so there was like a lot of individual growth, but also very much the mutual growth and, together the relationship. So like I didn't go back to that person. Like I'm Ari's Chava, and everything that I've learned from him, I married my best friend that I've looked up to and learned from every single day. And we told that to each other every single day. So that's I'm not that like.
So he's part of this new person.
He's still a part of me. I feel him all the time. I see him through the kids. I see a lot of things through his eyes in a sense, which I always wonder like how much, how psychological it is, or how much like I really like there is some sort of, but I definitely feel that like I'm channeling him, and if sometimes I feel less, then I work on it. Like because I want him to be an active part of life. I talk about him. I learn about him. I open all the books that he was in the middle of reading, and I see where his last bookmark is. I want to see like to the Kindle to see what he was reading before he died. Like I want to see the world in his eyes. And also it's extremely important for the kids to know their father, and that's his family is also amazing with that. We're really, really, really a part of on a weekly basis, and we do things together, and we also continue to talk about him and share experiences that Ari would have loved to be a part of as well. And so that's ongoing all the time.
So a lot of people like to commemorate and to help people live on. You're involved in a cookbook of his, of his recipes. Can you show that? I know you brought that with, or stickers, magnets. Can you show us what that is? Right.
So the thing is with Ari is that we know that he would want to be commemorated in the fun things that he liked to do, in the ways that he enjoyed just like spending time with our kids. So he loved cooking, he loved reading to them. So for his yahrzeit, we decided that we're going to definitely have that in the center, because we just really want to, share his light with the world, and not just the focus on the death and the army side. So this is funny. Now I feel like it's a cooking show.
No, it's nice to see. Is this for sale, by the way?
It's not for sale. We give it
Okay.
out.
So if anyone wants it after, they can reach out to me. We can arrange.
So this is Ari's cooking book. Ari with the pictures, and there's stories about there's pictures and stories of what the connection is like.
Amazing.
So he used to give out recipes. He used to cook like in the community. If there's a woman that gives birth, so the community cooks meals, like a meal train. So he used to be on the meal train. Like I would be like, okay, she gave birth. What day should I sign us up? And he would tell me when. Every event we would bring something, and I knew that people are gonna ask for the recipe afterwards. Mm-hmm. He just loved, the flavors. He was a geek in many ways, but when it came to food, that's when like he was so adventurous. 7 different types of vinegar. Why do you need 7 different? Sorry, it's just so that was that. We put out magnets of Ari saying like with his quote that we will see this through. I think it's so important. 15 months into the war, there's so much. It's so long, and seems like it's still gonna be quite a while. Really. That decision that we have, that we're, as Am Yisrael, because Am Yisrael needs to make that decision as well. Ari loved reading. He always had a book in his pocket. He has many quotes of things that he said regarding to that. When Ari was killed, what he had on him at that time was Masechet Sanhedrin and Gemara that he was in the middle of Daf Yomi. Yeah. And the Kindle with a book. He always had a book on him. Amazing. He said, if you have a book in your pocket, you're never going to be bored. So we took out, but we made bookmarks because Ari had a thing with bookmarks.
Stunning.
And it's just, It's
beautiful.
So these are things that Ari Mamash said. He used to say this to our kids with it.
Oh, the saying that you said in your if you've
Ari,
got a book in your pocket.
He said it in English, so we translated it to Hebrew.
And the second quote here is that you should let the child's imagination work.
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Ari, the way he always taught the kids how to use their imagination. So I would be like the more practical person. And Ari was very practical as well. But his imagination, like he wrote, he had like beginnings of books that he started writing. He wrote poetry, and he had this wild imagination. Him and Achia would sit down on the rug and just build this whole other world with magnets and Playmobil and just letting their imagination, go crazy. And that would also come, when they were reading books, and he used to tell them good night stories that he would make up as he was going. And Achia asks me for these stories and I don't know them.
I actually feel like one of the books he started, one of your kids is going to finish one day.
That would be so amazing. That would be so amazing. They all definitely have it from him. Amazing. They love reading books, and their imagination is crazy. Yeah. So yeah.
How do you, look at what he was doing in the army when he finished? Those few months. Was it something you're proud of that he went into the army? Is it hard to look at that he went into the army at that time? You just had a child.
Listen, you were here October 7th, right? Like there was no looking back. Yeah. There was this huge war that was breaking through, and it was on us. It was on us. It's not our parents. It's not our uncle. Like it's on us. That was the feeling. And Ari went there proud to be able to help. And I think Ari is the story of our generation. It's a generation that pashut rose up to this occasion. And that's what we did. And there's no looking back at that. And I know how proud Ari was of himself. He mentioned several times in many conversations how proud he is to be able to be at the army and not be at home at this time. And that he was also happy to be in the army in a place that's meaningful, that he feels that he's meaningful in combat. If it was in the Otif in the beginning, they were in Kisufim. And afterwards inside Aza. So I know for a fact that he was proud about being a part of this. He said that it's going to be long, that it's going to take time. But
it's amazing because what you just described, it's like in 200 years, people are going to listen to you saying this and they're going to be hearing history.
Yeah.
We rose to the occasion, and he died in Hanukkah. Like, he's literally a modern day Maccabee, someone that's really protecting our country, doing it to be proud. And, you know, that's something that we celebrate what you were doing with your family at the time and thinking about Hanukkah then. But no, right now, Bayami Mahem Bazman Hazeh, right at this time, they're living and continuing to spread this light. It's really transformative.
Ari actually wrote 2 letters from Aza. They didn't have phones, so they had to send letters, and then there was people that came in with their food and stuff, and then they would send the letters out, and they would send us the letters from there, like Mamash 1948. So we got 2 letters that Ari wrote within the 24 hours before he was killed. And in those letters, Ari says that he speaks of this experience of how symbolic it is to be in Aza fighting for Am Yisrael during Hanukkah. And he also said, like, he said, also us and the kids, like, we're all soldiers in this war of light against dark. Right. And he wrote to each kid personally a message that had to do with that as well. So, you know, we knew how he felt, and we truly believe in the job that we need to do here. And as a mother of kids, especially a boy, I know that Ari felt very strongly about needing to do this one right. And when he was interviewed for some video, he also said a few times, we'll see this through. This is a war that we need. It's on us to do it right and see it through.
Yeah, because it's protecting humanity. It's not just a person in a place. This is something broader. And the capacity of Ari to see that while he's in it is just, it's awe-inspiring.
Yes.
And I think it's so symbolic, you know, the first video I saw of your husband was the last video, I believe, that was taken of him.
Yes.
Lighting candles in Gaza.
Yeah.
And it's symbolic of what he continues to do for that light to continue.
Yeah. Also the light in the you know, the general, like the light versus the dark, especially in Aza at that point, there were no lights. It was really to do Pirsum Hanes on this whole different level.
Publicize the miracle.
Yeah. But it was also the decision to always combine the practical halacha and Judaism together with day to day. It was always combined.
Yeah, I mean, he was a Talmid Chacham. He was a wise, incredible person that made time to study Torah each day. He brought all these different ideas together, you know, and he was 32 years old. It's amazing how much he accomplished. It's
amazing. He used to tell me, it's about I used to complain of like, wow, I have so much work to do and it's already 4 hours. And he said, you need to make the decision, like how to spend your time. You need to be aware of your time, and you also need to rest, but you need to decide that you're resting. Like, it needs to be a decision.
For the last 30 hours, you've been 26 hours on shift, getting kids ready, having this interview now. When are you going to sleep? I think you're taking that message too strong.
No. I was always crazy that way. But
amazing.
But like, it was a thing of getting into like, and it was.
So what message do you think that he would want Am Yisrael to be hearing today? And what message would you want to share with the Jewish people and humanity today?
So there was one message that Ari wrote to, in Israel, there's a concept called Petek Nachat. I don't know how to translate that.
Yeah, it's like you give it to your child.
Yes.
To the teacher of your child.
Right, you give it to the child for like something
good
that they did. It's like this positive feedback, and the kids really love it and are really excited about it. Ari was home 4 times during the war for 24 to 48 hours, okay? Each time.
Over how many months was this period?
2.5 months.
So you only saw him 4 or 5 times?
4 times. And in the 3rd time, Ari took Achia to school, to Gan, and he wrote a Petek Nachat. He wrote that message for Achia about how nicely he davened and what it was so nice that he came to shul with him. And then he also wrote to the kids to keep learning and doing chesed and being together. Like, so, and he finished it, biyachad nenatzach, together we will win. And I think that's like a very strong message. That, he said, when we're in Gaza, we're on the border, at the conversations that we have, that's where we will solve all these crises that we're having, in the communication that we have, the people being ready and eager and wanting. So I think that's that togetherness of, like, even if we're different, to be able to sit down and talk and have a conversation, to learn about each other, to hear each other out. First of all, that shows that we care. And it also shows that we're together and that we're united and that we're making room for everyone. And so that was like a big thing that he, in his life in the last month, has shared with the world. I also know that he, truly believed that, the war, that we need to do it. We need to do a good job so our kids grow up in a safer world. And another thing that was a big message about Ari is his ability, again, to combine Olam HaTorah, our Jewish world, with the Yom Yom. And I want to bring a story. I want to say a story that in the first October 7th, they were gathering all their equipment, and they were sent to Otef Aza, to the border, and they went to Kisufim. And they were in Kisufim. They just switched to Golani, which a lot of their soldiers were killed in Kisufim. And there were still mechablim, in the terrorists in the kibbutz. And there were also victims that were still missing, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And on Thursday of that week, there was a terrorist that in a house they found, and he was throwing. There was a whole a battle in that house, and Ari was the last one to basically to shoot and make sure that the terrorist was neutralized. And that same exact team that was in that area were also affected on December 10th, and some of them were killed, Ari with his friends. And Ari, at that night, after that happened, after that battle, he sat down and he came to his friend and he said, I need to learn, let's learn something. Let's learn something together. That combination of doing, like, physical, doing what we need to do, but also always connecting, in a spiritual way, of learning in the Jewish identity, and always understanding why we're doing this, what it's for. It's not because we like swords and we like fighting. It's not because of that. It's because there's a big light in this world.
Wow. Well, he clearly brought that big light into the world, and we still feel that concept of togetherness. We need that now more than ever, on combining the worlds, the spiritual and the physical. To appreciate the physical, but to imbue it with meaning is incredible. And I just want to say that your name is Chava, which is, it represents the mother of humanity. And when I'm listening to you, I'm feeling, in a sense, and this is maybe hard for you to hear because you're just a person living your life, but there's a symbolicness of you as a mother, as a person, as an incredible, determined individual that speaks articulately, that gives love and warmth and empathy. And your job is to be a doctor, to heal and to help, and to channel that constant Ari. As you said, there was a Chava before and there's a Chava now. And that Chava is clearly, in an incredible trajectory. And we just give you a blessing and a bracha that you're able to continue to be that amazing mother for your kids, to be an amazing doctor, and to really inspire as many as you have in this conversation. Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory be for a blessing.